Thank you, Sylvia. I'm really happy to be here. I also would like to introduce Kathy Robinson-Learn. She's going to be my co-panelist today. And I'd also like to have an opportunity for the Early Start supervisors to introduce themselves so that you can see who our team is and who you could ever, if you ever need to reach out, who you could reach out to. So if we can start with Kathy.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kathy Robinson-Learn. I'm the supervisor for the new Provisional Eligibility Unit for children 3 to 4 years old.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maria Ortiz. I am the Early Start Supervisor in Unit 1.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Giselle Melik-Jahanian, and I'm an Early Start Supervisor at the San Fernando Valley office. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. My name is Christian Sanchez. I'm the Early Start Supervisor for Unit 5.
Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Paula Leonesio, and I am the Early Start Supervisor in Santa Clarita.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Rachel Lovers, and I am the Early Start Supervisor in the Antelope Valley for Early Start Unit 1.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Orsolya Tóth-Pető, and I am the supervisor for the Antelope Valley office, Early Start Unit 2. Welcome.
So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We'll get started with the slides, and Kathy and I will have our presentation. I will have questions at the end, so thank you so much for coming. We are going to be discussing the Early Start program and the Provisional Eligibility Program today. So let's get started. Our topics today are going to include eligibility criteria for Early Start, our Early Start intake process, what is an Individualized Family Service Plan or an IFSP, what are Early Start services, why early intervention is important, and what happens after Early Start. So our eligibility criteria. So there are 3 eligibility criteria where we can make a child eligible for Early Start. There's developmental delay, high risk, and established risk. So the first one is due to a delay in at least one area or domain. And the other 2 are due to medical concerns. So all 3 of these categories are going to need developmental evaluations of your child, but the high risk and the established risk conditions will need medical records in order to determine eligibility. And I'm going to go into what those evaluations are in this presentation. So when looking at your child's milestones, sometimes a parent wonders whether they should be concerned if their child is delayed in a certain area or whether they should get their child assessed, So please know though, when looking at behaviors and milestones, they're in a range. Children develop at different paces. So knowing what typical development is really helpful. What I've done is I've put specific delays in each domain to give you examples. So when looking at these slides, know that there will be things that overlap. Many of the things we do with our children support development in many different areas at the same time. So the 5 areas of development that we look at in Early Start is cognition, motor development, and that includes fine motor and gross motor. So fine motor are the smaller muscles, the handling, the picking up of something. And then the gross motor are the larger muscles, sitting, crawling, walking, running. Communication, which includes receptive and expressive communication. Receptive communication is the understanding of language. Do they understand when you're calling their name? Does a child understand when you're asking them to do something? And expressive language is how they express themselves. It could be verbal and it could be nonverbal. There's the social emotional domain, and I'll go into details of what that is. And then adaptive, which are the self-help skills. Infants love to be held. So we show excitement when we're talking to them, and when they make sounds, we talk to them, we read to them, we're singing to them. Being responsive helps our babies learn, it helps them to grow. We're encouraging them to explore in a safe environment so that they can grow to be independent. So some examples of cognitive delays are a 6-month-old not looking from one object to another, or a 12-month-old not finding a hidden object. So when you put that toy behind the pillow, do they know to go back behind the pillow because they saw you put it back there? Do they remember that it's there? A 12-month-old not knowing or responding to their own name, or a 24-month-old not pointing to a body part when asked. So, touch your belly button or touch your nose are things, that we typically say to a child. And do they know where it is? Do they point? For motor development, we put our babies on their bellies for tummy time. We're encouraging them to roll over. We're encouraging them to reach for toys. We, again, give them a safe place to explore as they become more and more mobile. Examples of motor delays, a 4-month-old that has no head control. So babies are not born with head control, but very quickly they learn to stabilize their head. A 6-month-old not reaching or transferring objects. So picking up that toy and handing it to the other hand. Are they transferring it from one hand to another? An 8-month-old not sitting without support. So again, ranges, but a baby typically will sit on their own at 6 months. And 17-month-olds not walking. So again, a range, but 12 months as a typical age where a child might walk. A 13-month-old is not delayed if they're not walking. It's still, within the normal range. Communication, babies communicate in verbal and nonverbal ways. So a child may put their arms up in the air when they want to be picked up. They point to the refrigerator when they're hungry or they want their sippy cup. It's all expressive communication. Receptive communication is the understanding of language. Does a child understand when you ask them to do something? Or like when you say bye-bye to grandma, do they wave bye-bye? Do they recognize their own name? So language delays actually is the highest number of referrals that we get in early start from parents and pediatricians. It's regarding language delays. So examples of some language delays: no babbling or pointing by 12 months, no words by 16 months, no 2-word phrases by 24 months. So a 2-word phrase would be I want or I go. And then concerning is a loss of speech at any age. That would be something you'd want to make sure your pediatrician was aware of. Social emotional development. It's the ability to experience and express feelings, form relationships, the ability to explore the world. Social emotional development is the foundation of all other learning. So we want our children to show emotions in healthy ways. We want them to handle the conflict peacefully. We want them to bounce back from that conflict. For a child, this starts with the relationship they have with their parents and their caregivers. Positive relationships change children's brains for the better. So we want our children to feel safe. We want them to feel secure. We want them to feel nurtured. We want them to feel loved. This is how they grow. This is how they learn. An example of handling conflict at this age would be a tantrum. So tantrums, very normal for 2-year-olds, toddlers tantrum. They get frustrated when they don't get what they want. They tantrum when they're tired, when they're hungry. And although tantrums get shorter as children get older, it's up to us as parents to know when the tantrum is too long, or if they are having trouble self-calming, coming out of that tantrum and being able to move on from that tantrum. So we do this by reading to them, talking to them, listening to them, enjoying time together, validating their feelings, and helping them connect with peers as they grow. We want to encourage pretend play. We want to encourage turn taking. All this supports healthy social emotional development. So examples of social emotional delays are 12-month-olds not waving bye-bye, 12-month-olds not playing games such as peekaboo, a 24-month not imitating what what the parent is doing. Like the parent is doing an activity, oftentimes, like cooking or cleaning, and then the child will imitate that. Or any age that a child is avoiding eye contact or does not want to be held. That's also concerning. As our babies become toddlers, they'll want to do things by themselves, and we will want to let them. This helps them gain skills. It helps them to feel really good about themselves. So they'll hold that sippy cup even if it spills. They'll want to choose the color of their own shirt that day. They'll put on 2 different types of shoes. That's okay. They'll start to feed themselves. Half of it will end up on the floor. All good. This is how they learn. This is how they explore. But they should have routines. So for them, they want to know that it's time to brush their teeth, and then it's story time, and then it's bedtime. So some examples of adaptive or self-help delays would be a 2-month-old not opening their mouth in response to food. So, when they're being fed, the mouth should open. A 16-month-old not using their fingers to feed themselves, picking up the food and putting it in their mouths. An 18-month-old not extending their arms to cooperate with dressing. So they're not dressing themselves yet, but they know to put their arms up because the shirt's coming on or off. Or a 24-month-old not enjoying imitating adult behavior. Again, the activities from the social emotional domain as well. Like we're overlapping. Some of these are overlapping if you've noticed. So the second category of eligibility is high risk. So this is not an exhaustive list. These are just 3 examples, but I wanted to give you some of the examples. So most of our babies who come to us with medical conditions are referred from either the birth hospitals, the NICUs, or from pediatricians. So some of the high risk criteria are prematurity of less than 32 weeks, or a birth weight of less than 1,500 grams. So 1,500 grams is approximately just over 3 pounds. Assisted ventilation for 48 hours or longer in the first 28 days of life. Non-febrile seizures during the first 3 years of life. So a non-febrile seizure there are febrile seizures and non-febrile seizures. Febrile seizures are the ones where a baby might have a high fever and it spikes super high. And then they'll have a seizure. That's very scary for a parent, but they're not necessarily dangerous. A febrile seizure is not related to a fever or as a result of that. It's more what we're looking for in terms of eligibility are the febrile seizures, more neurological. The third category of eligibility is established risk. So an established risk condition is a condition of known etiology, which has a high probability of resulting in a developmental delay. So some of the established risk conditions are eligible for early start. And then some of our established risk conditions are eligible for not only early start, but also under the Lanterman Act. So Down syndrome is an example of a child who would be eligible as an established risk condition, but would also be eligible at birth for the program of the ongoing regional center services under the Lanterman Act as well. So our intake process. Our intake applications are available to you electronically or on paper. So you can go to our website, fill them out, download them, or you can call us and we'll mail one to you. When our offices are open, you can, and they're open now, but you can come in and get an application. To give you an idea of our early start numbers, last year, we averaged 403 intakes per month. For this year, we're held and steady. We're at 401 averaging per month as well. So far we're staying the same. So our timeline for intake is 45 calendar days. So from the day we receive your referral, we need to process your application, assess your child, determine eligibility, and hold an IFSP, all in 45 days. We need written consent in order to start that assessment process. So having that right from the beginning is very helpful to this timeline. In fact, without it, it really pauses the process. Our applications need to have a minimum of the 5 demographics for us to accept it. So at a minimum, we need the child's name, date of birth, address, parent's name, and parent's phone number to be able to contact them. But having more information is very helpful for us to be able to proceed. For example, knowing what your concerns are about your child, what they're not doing that prompted you to be concerned. It's helpful for us to know what assessments to complete. So we review the application, we do a statewide search, which means that we're making sure the UCI or the identifying number that we're assigning to your child has not been done before anywhere in the state. If they're only allowed to have one UCI. We verify your address to make sure you live in the catchment area, in our area, and to make sure there aren't any typos, that it's a valid address. Then we enter all the information into our system. This is, so this entire slide, everything we do is typically within 2 business days. Once intake has verified the information, a service coordinator gets assigned to your child, and then they call you. They call the parent to gather additional information. We confirm that we have signed consents. We get medical records. We need to obtain medical records, so we need to get a consent form to obtain those records, and then we send them to the medical facilities to obtain those records. And then we discuss with you the needed evaluations to determine eligibility. We will assess in all areas, in any additional area of need. So an assessment will include input from many sources. So the tools that we use are standardized tools so that we can obtain standardized scores. It includes clinical input from the therapists. It includes parent report, since parents are truly the experts in their child, and medical records from the child's treating physicians. In determining eligibility and assessing needs, here are some examples of the types of evaluations that we complete. So what we're looking for is what your child can do, what are their strengths, what the child cannot do, what are their needs, what is the current age equivalent based on what your child's performing. So based on what they're performing, what age are they performing at? We all know children do not perform on demand. So that is why parent report is so important part of this process, of this assessment. We want to get an accurate picture of that child. So different specialists conduct different evaluations and assessments. So the type of evaluations we have are developmental evaluations, that is done by a child development specialist. We have speech evaluations done by a speech therapist. A physical therapy evaluation by a physical therapist, and an occupational therapy evaluation by an occupational therapist. There's also feeding evaluations. Those are also done by occupational therapists, and sensory evaluations, which are also done by occupational therapists. Once we receive evaluations and assessments are back, eligibility is determined by a team. It includes a review of the developmental evaluations and any other needed records, including medical records. And these are reviewed by our board certified pediatric specialists that we have at North LA for doctors. So what is an IFSP? An IFSP is a written plan for providing early intervention services to an infant or toddler and their families who have been determined eligible. An IFSP is developed with the family to address priorities, concerns, the infant or toddler's developmental strengths, needs, goals, and the services, the early intervention services that we're going to provide. So who is part of that IFSP? It's a team of people. It's a collaboration. So you can invite anyone to your IFSP meeting that you would like there. It starts with the child and then anyone else who's in the child's life or in their everyday routines. So you have a child in the center, you have your family, your regional center, your community, and the evaluations and assessments that we have conducted. So family can be, it could be anyone involved in the child's life, anyone who's a caregiver or who's just part of that circle for the child. Community, it can be a church, it could be a daycare provider, whomever is involved with your child on a regular basis. An IFSP is a conversation about your child. We want to get a full picture of your child. What are their everyday routines? Who do they spend time with? What are your concerns about their development? An IFSP document is based on your concerns. So it's based on the reports that we get from the therapists, and we create goals together. It's based on those goals that we come up with, we determine the right services that are that will meet your child's needs. So let's talk about services. Early start services are to meet the unique needs of your child. So just because children have the same delay does not mean that they learn skills or generalize the skills in the same way. Each child's unique. The services that are provided are going to be different from child to child. We have to consider the location, the environment of that service. We consider frequency, we consider duration. So together we determine the appropriate service delivery for your child. Early start services are agreed upon in the IFSP. And early start services are provided in the natural environment unless there's a justification identified in the IFSP. So a natural environment is a setting that is natural or typical for the same child without a disability. So it could include the home or a community setting, such as a daycare, park, a library, a parent and me class, the grocery store, grandma's house. Children learn best in the environment where they spend most of their time. So when services are provided in the natural environment, it increases the likelihood that they're going to practice that skill over and over, increasing the chance that they will learn that skill and be able to generalize it to other areas. So an early start service uses the teach the teacher model. So the parent is the primary teacher. The therapist is there to support, teach, and coach the parent. And direct participation from the parent is essential. So therapy will look different each time. A therapist may be modeling something new for the parent or the child, or they may be sitting back and watching the parent, reinforcing a particular skill or providing guidance, support, or suggestions. There may be homework that a therapist will give a parent to work on during the week. What is learned in the therapy session must be reinforced by the parent throughout the week. The child's going to make appropriate pace progress. So a child develops their skills not just in that therapy session, but because they get to practice all week long what they learned in that therapy session. That's why the direct parent participation is essential, because the parent needs to know what's happening in that therapy session so that they can work with their child throughout the week and practice it and reinforce it and encourage it. Regarding the types of services. So a child development specialist works on all areas of development. For example, your child may have a gross motor delay, but physical therapy may not be the appropriate service. Or a child who's pre-linguistic, meaning they're not of an age when they would typically have developed words yet. So that child may be delayed in the area of communication, but a speech therapist may not be the appropriate service yet. So a child development specialist is trained in early childhood development, and they build skills in all areas. Speech therapy. That is for children who are at an age where expressive language would be appropriate, but they're not using the words yet at a level where they should. So a speech therapist would be able to provide services at that point. The same for physical therapy. If a child is walking, let's say, but not running or not alternating feet to go up and down the stairs, that would not necessarily be a physical therapist who would provide that therapy to meet the goals. But a child development specialist could work on those. But if a child has muscle tone concerns or weakness that's causing them not to sit up or crawl or walk or roll, that may be when a PT is warranted. Occupational therapy. Occupational therapists have actually many different roles. An OT can work on fine motor. Those are the small muscles, such as picking up the object or holding the object. An OT can also work on sensory concerns. So when a child gets overstimulated and needs help how to self-calm in an appropriate amount of time, that could really be something that an occupational therapist can assist with. There's feeding therapy. Feeding therapy may be needed if a child is pocketing food, like in the back of their mouths, rather than chewing it, or maybe has recently had a G-tube removed. So feeding therapy can be done by an occupational therapist, or actually an SLP, a speech therapist, can also do feeding therapy. Not all SLPs are comfortable doing it. They usually, we look for whether a feeding therapist is certified in feeding. Then there are family support services. So parenting supports are to assist the parent with helping your child generalizing those skills that they are learning. These are usually child development specialists, and they provide support and guidance on how to handle certain behaviors that are interfering with the learning that you're attempting to do with your child. Behavioral services are services that are more intense than child development or parenting support. So sometimes a child, for example, with autism spectrum disorder, who can benefit from applied behavioral analysis or ABA. Also, it's important to know that we are a payer of last resort. And so for medical-based services, OT, PT, speech, and ABA, we do review the use of private health insurance for coverage and benefits. Also in Early Start, we can review for reimbursement of copays, coinsurance, and deductibles, and we do not assess income in Early Start. Only under age 3 is income not assessed. There are other specialists that may be involved in your child's therapy. This is based on the unique needs of your child. And here are some of them listed. So why is early intervention important? So the goals of Early Start. One, we want to minimize any delays in development as early as possible. We want to close the gap as children enter the school system at age 3, reducing the need for special education services for them. We want to maximize a child's potential to live independently as they grow and become an adult. And we want to maximize the ability of families to meet their child's special needs. So First 5 LA reports that 90% of a baby's brain is developed by age 5. So that's why earlier is better. All right, what happens after Early Start? So there are 2 programs within the Regional Center. Regional Center services under the Lanterman Act. This is for those who have been diagnosed with a developmental disability. Those are intellectual disability, autism spectrum disorder, epilepsy, cerebral palsy, and Category 5. Category 5 is a disabling condition found to be closely related to an intellectual disability or requires similar treatment of someone with an intellectual disability. So prior to exiting Early Start, you will be asked if you want your child assessed for ongoing regional center services. Based on a medical and a psychological evaluation, your child could be eligible at age 3 for ongoing regional center services. This is if your child has a lifelong developmental disability. This program is a lifelong program. So once eligible under this program, your child is eligible for life. For this slide, I am going to hand it over to Kathy Robinson-Learn. She's going to discuss the Provisional Eligibility Program.
Thank you, Elisa. So your first question may be, what is the Provisional Eligibility Program? We're very excited to be part of this new program that started in July of 2021 that is under the Lanterman Act. It's for children that are ages 3 and 4 years old who have not been diagnosed with a developmental disability, but have a disability that's not physical in nature, but not physical in nature, but have significant functional limitations in one of the 5 areas. So the 5 areas are self-care, receptive and expressive language, learning, mobility, and self-direction. So when this program, prior to July 2021, children who did not meet the full eligibility for Lanterman, as Elisa previously stated, received a notice of action that they did not qualify for Lanterman services. From July 2021 moving forward, children that are 3 years old would be reviewed now through a psychological evaluation that would be requested during your transition meeting, or a 2.9. It could be sooner or a little bit later, but a licensed clinical psychologist would perform a psychological evaluation to determine the child's strengths and areas of concern, and submit a report to our interdisciplinary team to determine whether or not the child would be eligible for the provisional program. And in the provisional program, the services that are provided really focused on helping the families access their generic resources, such as the school district, so that if they continue to need services like physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, those therapies are typically provided in your school district through an individual education plan or an IEP. So our service coordinators, we have a dedicated unit in the PEP program, the Provisional Eligibility Program, that focused on assisting parents with accessing generic resources as well as IEP resources. We also provide most Lanterman Act services, including respite care, adaptive skills, and any other services that are under the Lanterman Act that may be necessary and justified through an assessment process of need. What happens before a child turns 5? Our program ends at the age of 5. So prior to 5 years old, at 4.9, a family would receive, for the child to receive another psychological evaluation to determine if those 2 conditions that they had that had significant limitations, if those limitations have been addressed, if the child has made progress with being in school, receiving therapies at school, maybe receiving therapies through insurance, accessing community programs, other generic resources. And at that time, it would be determined whether or not the child would continue under the Lanterman Act with being diagnosed with a developmental disability. So we're very excited to have the opportunity to work with families because we know that when a child turns 3 and you still have concerns, but you're not really sure, we're wanting to make sure that we have the opportunity to continue to provide case management services and connect with community resources. If your child does not qualify, wonderful, you've graduated from the program, yay. So you will get a notice of action, just explaining that your child's doing well. If you have any questions or you think, I'm not really sure about that response, you can always appeal that. If your child continues to need services over 3 and is diagnosed with a developmental disability, then your child would move to a regular school age unit for ongoing case management. If you have any questions, you can definitely reach out and look at our website at www.nlacrc.org, or you can call our main number and ask to speak to over 3 intake, or ask for to speak with anyone in the provisional eligibility unit. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. So other programs after age 3 include special education services through the school district and community-based programs such as private preschools or Head Starts. So prior to age 3, Early Start will refer your child to the district for special education. The district will conduct an assessment and determine if your child's eligible for special education. If eligible, these programs are preschool type programs, and they're typically located at an elementary school campus in your district. If eligible, your child will receive an IEP, an Individualized Education Plan. Those are the non-regional center resources after age 3. I've put together some resources for you. There's Learn the Signs, Act Early, which is a downloadable document that describes milestones at certain ages. It also has a list of things to do with your baby or your toddler to help them grow and to help them learn. The next 2 are first 0 to 3 and First 5 LA. Those are great websites. They have a lot of resources. And then the 4th one is an FAQ that is put out by DDS specifically about Early Start. So that brings us actually to the end. I'd like to find out if there are any questions. I'm going to stop sharing and go to the Q&A.
Can I just add one more thing, Elise? I'm sorry.
Yes,
I forgot to add that the Provisional Eligibility Program is not an extension of Early Start. So your Early Start services would still end at age 3, and you would enter, their child would enter the program at age 3, and our program ends at age 5. Thanks.
Thank you. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the question and answers tab at the bottom. And then I would be happy to answer anything about Early Start. Kathy can answer anything about provisional. I'll give you guys an opportunity to type. I don't want to assume there are no questions. There are no questions there as of right now. Are there any hands up? I can't see any of the participants.
There are no, yes, there are no hands up.
Okay, thank you, Sylvia. So I'll just give it a minute. I don't see any questions. We must have done a great job in giving you all the information.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Are we still providing services both in-home and also virtual?
In Early Start, yes.
Yes.
We are providing services based on parent preference. We have vendors who are providing services in-home, and we also have vendors who are available to provide services through remote services. Remote service delivery has been added to our the language into our laws, so we have the availability to continue to provide remote. However, it is an IFSP decision, and a parent chooses, parent choice.
What
Well, I
about
want to
center?
thank everyone. Oh, go ahead,
I
Kathy.
was going to say, what about center-based programs? How does that work?
Center-based programs are programs for children who are maybe not as successful as they can be in the natural environment without supports. So a center-based program would be at a clinic-based site, and it's usually a socialization type setting where there are multiple children and they're working on different skills that they need more assistance from the therapists. So this could be, sensory concerns where they're not transitioning from one activity to another at an appropriate way. It could be a child who maybe has an extraordinarily long tantrum, doesn't know how to self-calm. And so we're going to work on some of that in the community setting. What it does is it gives the child an opportunity to learn how to learn the skill with others there. So it's more of in a group setting. We need justification in an IFSP by law. We need a justification for having anything not in a natural environment. A center-based program is not natural environment. So that justification in the IFSP will need to be very behavior specific, very child specific, very behavior specific. So we'll need to know what it is about your child that we need to provide this more support in a controlled setting, and why it can't happen in a mommy and me class, for example. We could provide, if we can provide the service in the mommy and me class or a parent and me class, then with a child development specialist as support, that would be a natural environment.
And Elisa, is the parent present during the center sessions?
Yes, parent is present for absolutely everything in Early Start. Parent participation is essential. We need parents to be very involved. Parents will help children practice those skills throughout the week. They're there to also learn. We're there to support, teach, and guide. Parents are there to do that for their child the rest of the time that the therapist is not with your child. So parent participation is more than essential. It is required in Early Start. Any other questions? Well, I'd like to thank you all for coming. I really appreciate everybody's interest in Early Start and our provisional program. We are available for ongoing questions. Should something come up afterwards, please do feel free to reach out to any one of us. You know who your Early Start supervisors are. Kathy and I are available as well. And thank you.
A quick reminder that a survey will appear on your screens once we leave. We thank you in advance for taking a couple of minutes of your time to fill out the survey. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thank you.